my first question to you is, this is a science that's known as to be the most opinionated science, yet it's still based off of evidence. Why do you do what you do in this field of work?
Yeah. As you had sent me those questions, I think the thing that comes to my mind is Parks and Rec. You remember when Leslie Knope goes, all I have is facts and science, and nobody likes facts and science, or everybody hates facts and science. And so I feel like we definitely have, a good amount of like nutrition research that can at least put us in a good starting place. I think a lot of the times where that opinion comes from is the misinformation that we probably see online, or like I feel like a lot of people, I've seen a lot of reels that joke about, they'll play a clip of somebody talking about don't eat this because it's bad, and they'll go, okay, I won't do that, and then they pick up something else, and then they go, oh, they hear another reel of somebody going, oh, that's bad, don't eat that, and then they eventually get to a point where all they have is ice, and that's what they're eating, right? And so I think that the problem is more so that we just have access to all of this information that may be good or may not be good, and for the general consumer that doesn't have a lot of that, research background or nutrition background, it's really hard to know what is right and isn't right with all this access to information. So I think that it's more of, I love that I get to be that person that does help somebody be able to weed through all of that information and figure out, based off of their lifestyle, maybe their pre-existing medical conditions, their goals, how they can actually apply good, sound nutrition science to their lives. Because I think that it's out there. It's more of just how does somebody individualize that to themselves, and if they're not finding, the information from really reputable sources, that's where people can get really mixed up in that, like what is actually true and what's not. Yeah.
It's not just nutrition, is it? Because we kind of go off of what is most relevant and what we see, what was easy for us to, information for us to get. And when we have this easy, accessible information, we tend to just grab right towards what we think is right from wrong. I know what the direction of what we're going to talk about, but again, with something that is so open to what and based off of person to person, it's difficult to really ask questions for me. If you were to build a nutrition plan for someone who is I'm 6'1", 180 pounds, will be different than someone who is 150 pounds, female and 5'5", right, for example. That's what's the most interesting to me, is that one, I know very little about it, and two, I don't think I'll ever know anything or ever know everything about it.
Yeah, and I won't either. So
I was just gonna ask you, how much do you think you know
about nutrition?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I know, definitely enough to be considered an expert in nutrition. And so I think that is a good question in terms of going back to as well, like what's the difference between a registered dietitian and a nutritionist? Because a lot of people don't really know that difference, where nutritionist is not a regulated term. So technically, Jody, you could go to a blog and read about nutrition and then say that you're a nutritionist. Whereas a registered dietitian, we have to meet very specific and certain criteria, right? So it is a regulated term. Now you have to get a master's degree in order to even sit for the registered dietitian exam. So you have to have certain amount and types of education within your bachelor's degree and master's degree to be able to sit for the exam. So, we take courses like clinical nutrition basis, chemistry. That was a tough one. I really had to work hard on that one. Food service management, community nutrition. So it's a really wide base of just like educational information. And then you have to apply and get accepted to an internship that's 1,200 hours, get your master's degree now, and then you have to sit for that exam, pass it, and then you have licensure requirements and continuing education. And so not only does a registered dietitian have that background in terms of the actual education, we've had to actually be supervised and have a full internship, and then we have to do continuing education for the rest of our our time as a dietitian. And so going back to your question of like, what do we think we know? I would say that like, if you're looking for someone who is a good, reputable source of information, definitely look for a registered dietitian. It's just a lot easier. I always do like to say that, you know, nutritionists, there can be some people that are technically nutritionists that are still good sources of information, but since it's not a regulated term, you do have to tread very carefully there, right? So I think if we're thinking about a registered dietitian, they would be considered the experts in diet and nutrition. And then I would say for me personally, I've been very grateful that I've been able to specialize more so in sports nutrition and eating disorders. And so while I don't know everything and anything about all of the different things that, you know, coalesce nutrition, I would say that I do know a good amount when it comes to sports nutrition and eating disorders. So
yeah. And the big question for me, one of the big questions I have for you is, where are we right now in terms of what we know about the science of nutrition? What do you see, and do you enjoy and like what you're seeing with the trends in nutrition right now?
Like in the broader culture, would you say? I think that there's some good things as well as maybe some things that we can improve upon. You know, I think some of the good things that I'm seeing is that I feel like there's more of a push towards like just health versus dieting. That's still there, but I do feel like there's more of this like overall well-being, health aspect, self-care that's being pushed, as well as improvements in people speaking out about body positivity, and also maybe more of a positive eating framework called intuitive eating. So I feel like, so intuitive eating it's a framework of eating that I feel like is a much more positive way for people to approach their eating and nutrition. And that was started like decades ago. But I feel like, so intuitive eating, like I mentioned, it's a framework of eating that incorporates both your instinct, rational thought, and your emotions. It was created by two dietitians, like I mentioned a couple decades ago, and it essentially it's a self-care eating framework that helps people to eat in a way that is more healthful and is actually sustainable. So it's not like a diet where it tells you what to eat, when to eat, and how much. It's very much so taking into consideration the fact that when we make nutrition decisions, it's not just in this little box of like nutrition, right? Like there's the social aspect, there's cultural aspects, there's logistical aspects, right? And so that's what I love about it, is that if somebody adopts an intuitive eating pattern, they're more likely to sustain that and be able to implement it when life inevitably happens, right? So like somebody could go on the carnivore diet, for example, and that could be great for a certain period of time, but then let's say they have kids or they get a new job, or you know, they have to take care of aging parents.
Like something happens.
Right. Like that can be really difficult to continue implementing that. And so I think that's where I really enjoy intuitive eating for most people, because it does like allow them to adapt in those situations. So I feel like that's getting more spotlight in our broader culture. So those are some of the things that I'm excited about. But then some of the things that I feel like we can improve upon is, you know, like I mentioned, I think there is still this very weight-centric approach when it comes to somebody's health and well-being. There's still, I feel like a lot of emphasis on like eating clean or eating certain foods. And I think, you know, like we had talked about with some of the misinformation, I think people are, they really tend to listen to people if, you know, they have their shirt off and they've got six-pack abs and they're in their grocery store yelling about something and saying it very confidently, even if it's not accurate. Like people are drawn towards that confidence, right? And they want to look like that. And so whether what they're saying is right or wrong, it's really easy for people to get bought into those things. And I feel like fear mongering and those clickbait, you know, subjects, people are more likely to be drawn to those things. So and of course, you know, the low carb phase, I feel like that's what we're on. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of carbs. And so I think those are things, you know, it used to be low fat. Now I think it's low carb, and protein is literally in every single thing. So those are some things that I feel like that we can improve upon, or some things that I would like to see a little bit differently.
The way that you're speaking about it is it used to be this, now it's this, and it changed back to this. It sounds like it's a trend of clothes. Like
yes, it is.
Going from baggy to skinny, then back to baggy.
Right.
And then let's think of like bell bottoms or something. Like that, you know, it's back in polka dots, you know. And that's the way that's what I'm getting from what you're saying, is that these trends are seen not just in fashion and in music. It's seen in a science.
Oh, yeah.
And
for sure.
most of the time, you don't really see social trends in, I guess, a science like biology, chemistry, or environmental science. It's more of a trend of, you see social trends in nutrition because it's based off of many different factors, like you said. You said intuitive. Is it intuitive?
Yes, intuitive eating.
Intuitive eating. Can you change that word to flexible?
Yes. Yes, you could in a way. I feel like you would still need the intuitive part because yes, it does incorporate flexibility. Like where diets, it tells you like this is what you eat when you eat for the most part. Whereas flexible, that encourages, okay, I can incorporate all foods into my diet and I can be flexible like with what I'm eating depending on the situation. But also I do feel like that intuitive piece does need to be there because while you're being flexible, you also need to make sure that you're tuning into your own unique internal cues, you know? And so I do think that it can be, maybe it's like intuitive is the umbrella and flexible is like part, like it within the umbrella,
I like that,
maybe. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to mention the word flexible because doing research on you, the last thing that you would have accomplished and then what would have popped out to me is you created something based off of something that I personally want to learn more of, and that's nutrition. But also more so running a business, opening a business, and targeting a particular audience while still making it open to everyone. Now, you mentioned before we started recording is that you specialize more with athletes in recovery and what they eat and when they eat. But I wanted to understand what the process is like for you right now, running a business while you're still doing your passion, which is in nutrition.
Yeah. So what is my process? Like, what am I currently doing or what does like a day look like for me? Yeah. So that has definitely evolved quite a bit over the course of me opening Flexible Nutrition. I would say right now I'm hoping to move closer to doing primarily consulting work and then really trying to narrow down my clients with Flexible Nutrition, mainly those specialty areas, right? So like, whereas before I was seeing more of a wider variety of clients, I was seeing more specifically like flexible nutrition, one-on-one nutrition counseling patients. Whereas now I'm moving away from that and really trying to focus more on managing the business because I'm so grateful to have, a handful of employees. And while it's great, it does require a lot more background administration work. And we do take insurance. And so, that's a whole other background administration piece of verifying insurance, sending in claims, checking in on claims, sending out bills, all of that good stuff. And so I'm transitioning more to taking care of those things in the background. And then my consulting work is more so with, things like Wichita State University, the athletics department, other universities, as well as I do a lot of professional speaking events and things like that. And so that's a little bit more of what I'm wanting to focus on. And then again, like I mentioned, still seeing some clients do flexible nutrition, but primarily more of like, it has to be an athlete or it's, I also incorporate in my athlete category first responders too. So my husband is a police officer and so I'm passionate about that area as well. And so I consider them athletes because you have to, it's a more labor intensive job than other things, right? And then the eating disorders. And so that's kind of more so like what that's evolved into and what I'm currently doing and maybe a brief glimpse of what that looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Before I ask you where it all started, for me to understand, to create this vision of something that is for everyone while continuing your passion, I want to pick your brain about the idea of creating it where in your first few days, I want you to picture your first few days creating flexible nutrition and just walk me through the process of getting the idea and then attacking it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So I always love when people ask me like when I started flexible nutrition because it was March 2020.
Oh, that's coming
up. And if most people understand what happened in March 2020, that was when COVID. But it ended up actually being like, the perfect business model for a pandemic, which I can talk about at another point. But yeah, so I was when I graduated and, got my registered dietitian, and ended up starting my work, I didn't necessarily have my full flexible nutrition vision at that point. I had in the back of my mind that maybe at some point I might want to start my own thing. I was like, that could be interesting. We'll see if it happens. I was actually living in Arkansas at the time with my husband, and I ended up getting a job at a Trauma One hospital in the Fayetteville area, and I hated every single second of it.
Wow.
I just am a very relationship building person, and that wasn't something that I could do there. It felt very much like I was in and out, like I didn't even have time to go to the bathroom or breathe. It felt like it was just it was a lot. It was, a very large high trauma hospital. And so while I got really good clinical basis at that point, it just wasn't where I really felt like my passions were going to be. And so we ended up moving from there to Wichita, and I ended up getting a job at PACE through Hope, if you're familiar with PACE. Yep. And that was really great. I felt like I actually got to build some relationships there. I got to do a mix of different things. I've also found that I don't do really well if I have if every single day is the exact same and perfectly scheduled for me. So I really noticed too that, okay, I really like to have variance in my day and different things that I'm doing. And so that fulfilled it. But I noticed that I just kept getting this feeling that I really wanted to work more with athletes, because I was an athlete and I knew how changing my nutrition and having a good relationship with food really helped me to just have a healthier life and to be a better athlete. And then the other piece of that was that I also wanted to be able to counsel people from a place within my philosophy that I felt like was the best way to counsel people, which was from that more intuitive eating and non-diet or health at every size approach. And so with all of those goals, I noticed that if I was going to work in athletics in any capacity in Wichita, I was going to have to create my own thing.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't available here. And so my original plan was that I was going to just primarily work with athletes. Okay. And I was going to approach it from that intuitive eating and health at every size standpoint. And so I opened up the business, and initially I decided, you know what, I'm going to see a variety of clients, because I feel like it'll be really good for me to get more outpatient experience, because at that point I had some with PACE. I didn't have very much with my job in the hospital, because that wasn't outpatient, it was inpatient related things. And so I was seeing more than just athletes when I first started it. And I think that was really good for me just to build up more of that outpatient counseling skills and just to continue more of that clinical basis. But that was the primary impetus for starting Flexible Nutrition.
That was, I would say, based off of what I've seen, your latest type of creation. I'll describe it that way. I want to take it back even further.
Yeah, sure.
Why, I asked you the original question, why do you do what you do? But I want to know, when did this start? Take me back to when you were playing soccer at Butler Community College. Take me back to when you were a freshman.
Yeah, so I always joke that I ended up deciding to be a dietitian because I wanted to be in the healthcare field, but I didn't want to touch people. And that joke was on me because we ended up doing nutrition-focused physical exams in the hospital, and so I did end up having to touch people, which is fun. But now I don't have to touch people, which is great. And my mom was actually a dietitian, and so that's how I had even heard of the term before. I didn't actually decide to become a dietitian or to pursue that until going into K-State or going into my junior year there. So I actually originally thought that I was going to major in kinesiology because I was like, well, that could at least get me started in this general path. But then the more that I did some research and thought about it, I ended up going specifically to the dietetics route. So initially, it really wasn't even from a place of intense passion or oh yeah, I'm going to use this to work with athletes. It really was more so of just it took me forever to really figure out a direction to go. And it really mostly just started from that standpoint of just, I feel like this is probably going to be the best fit for me if I have to have a job. This is what I'll do, and I'm not going to be in school for 1,000 years in the healthcare field. I wouldn't say that my passion towards it, and, you know, passion working with athletes and then maybe athletes with eating disorders. That probably didn't really come to fruition until more so as I recovered from my own eating disorder, and working more like one-on-one with patients when I started flexible nutrition. So
I got you. And was it ever a case of this was always something that maybe you saw yourself, oh, because I want to be healthy, I want to also promote health. You saw, well, I see a little bit of the end goal. Is that what you're saying to me? Is that you saw a little bit of it at that time?
Yeah. So I ended up, I think it was my sophomore year of college at Butler. I did start making some small nutrition changes. And when I say nutrition changes, Jody, I mean, like, I actually just started like thinking about my nutrition, right? Like, and this was actually spring of sophomore year. So this was after both my full seasons. This was just during the off season as I was transitioning to figure out, okay, what am I going to do after Butler? But we were still, you know, we would scrimmage at least once a week. We were still strength training, still doing a lot of intense practicing. And so, like, at that point, I don't know what got into me. I think that maybe one of my roommates like switched their dairy milk for almond milk, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I know that was a big thing back then was, you know, ditching dairy completely, which I've come full circle around, and I love dairy, and I'm never touching almond milk again. But that was kind of the impetus for like, oh, you know, maybe I should start like thinking more about this. And so again, I just started thinking about it. It wasn't any like drastic, like I changed my whole diet. It was more of just, I'm actually going to eat before I go practice in the morning. I'm going to actually get a breakfast afterwards instead of just like some Belvita crackers or biscuits, you know, in a package afterwards. And I noticed that I felt better. I was able to run better, run faster. I did better in practices. And so yeah, so that was kind of I was like, oh, I started to notice that nutrition was helping me to be a better athlete. And so there definitely was some of that too going into why I decided to do dietetics. I think that was always kind of in the back of my mind, but I wouldn't say that was like, I for sure was going to be a sports dietitian. Yeah. I think I was still pretty open to maybe where it was going to lead me at that point.
I got you. Being at that age where you're tossing up the ideas of what you want to do in as a career in life, did it ever get overwhelming to think that you have to make a decision at some point? Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that's what took me so long too, was that I didn't want to make the wrong decision. And, you know, because school was so expensive. I think, thankfully, you know, I really do encourage and think, you know, if somebody doesn't know what they want to do, community college could be really helpful, because you can at least get a lot of your gen eds out of the way at a, you know, much lower cost. The classes are a lot smaller, so it's a little bit easier to get to know your professor too and ask them questions and get help if you need to. And so I think that was really beneficial for me, because, you know, I was able to do it at a much lower cost. And then when I was actually paying the big bucks was when I actually kind of, you know, more so knew, okay, this is what I want to do. But yeah, I would agree. I feel like it is a super overwhelming decision for sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
Now that you're here, what has brought you here today is my interest in learning more about not just who you are, but what you do and what makes you, I want to say what makes you tick, because I understand what makes me tick. And to understand that as a phrase where it's constantly not overused, but it's used constantly. I want to understand, when you wake up every day, you want to help people. And the first thing that I'm thinking about when helping people is you don't want to just earn a living, you want to serve others. And we already spoke before, and you understand, and you know the questions I'm going to ask you. But one thing about earning a living and serving others, and to be able to pair the two together, is under an umbrella that we both know as Christians is faith. And it's always a very difficult conversation that I try to incorporate, because that's part of me. Yeah, that's awesome. But I know that with cameras in front of my face and your face is not going to be loved by everyone. It's not going to be received well by everyone, because not everyone believes in the same thing. your journey with faith. I want to talk about that because
Yeah.
mine was only of recently,
Oh,
about 2
great.
years ago.
Yeah.
I want to understand that from you serving others to also make it a living.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of that question, I mean, definitely my belief in Jesus is the overarching, like, primary goal in my life is to, make his love known to others and to love others well in the way that he does. And so I think that my job provides a unique opportunity for me to be able to live that out, whether that's, I'm meeting with someone who also shares that faith. And so we can, I can use those principles and encourage them in that as they work on improving their relationship with food. I found that has been so transformative for a lot of my clients, especially those that deal with disordered eating or eating disorders, because it helps give them that purpose, right? It helps them to be able to get outside of the worldly things and to be able to see more of, okay, I have more to my life than just how and what I eat and how I look, right? And so I feel like it's a really powerful way for me to help walk with clients in that road to recovery. And so that's one of the ways that it shows up for me and how I approach it. But then also, I have plenty of other clients that don't believe in the same faith, and that's okay, right? Like it's not something that I push on them or, whatever, but I have found that there's a lot of principles when it comes to faith that actually can help people in their recovery. So there's a lot of times, and I always joke about this with my pastor, is that I use a lot of his terms and a lot of things that he preaches about on Sundays when I am working with a patient, even if they're not, faith-based. So an example is direction, not perfection, right? So, it's not about, are you, the perfect follower of Jesus? Do you never sin? It's more so, what is the direction of your life going towards? And so it's the same thing with nutrition, right? Like, just like we can't be perfect in any area of our life, we can't be expected to be perfect in nutrition. And so it's more about, what is the direction of your nutrition looking like? Is your direction towards eating a well-balanced diet, paying attention to it on a regular basis? So is most of your food coming from whole foods and then having some processed foods here and there, or, having mostly, some whole grains with proteins, healthy fats, and some fruits and vegetables, and then here and there you have pizza with the family, right? So it's not about being perfect, it's about that direction. And so I'm able to use a lot of those things when I'm working with clients. That's not necessarily like specifically where I'm like, here's my faith and you're going to do this. It's more of using some of those principles to help people as I'm counseling them. So hopefully, does that help answer that question?
That's
Okay.
interesting, because the perfection, I didn't think about it that way, where I started off by saying this is a science that, it's a lot of opinions and a lot of things to consider before getting to a conclusion. And it didn't even come to me when I was making these questions, is that it's imperfect, almost, if I can say that. Yeah. It's imperfect where it gives more room to find more.
Right.
And if you and me decide that we don't want to find more, then it's kind of, we think we are perfect. And as I continue to go through school and I understand and ask questions more, being perfect really only leads you into, like, you're closing off a lot of doors. You know what I mean? And what you're saying is about, like, with your clients that aren't necessarily faith-based, still the same principle applies, where you want them to feel comfortable having a pizza when they think that they just need to eat strictly every single day the same thing. Right. Being imperfect seems to be a practice that opens more doors and is more comfortable for most people. Right. Like, I actually joke that if somebody's perfect, there's a problem. Like, if you're perfect with your eating, that's probably not okay. Yeah. So you bring up a great point for sure. Thing. Perfection. Is there a, well, I know the answer to this question, but I want to go around this topic. The perfect diet. What does it look like? Yeah. So I always like to go back to, Ellen Satter has a really good
like outline for like what does normal eating look like. And so I feel like that's what I like to go back to a lot with my clients, that especially if they do have that perfectionistic mentality, and I think a lot of athletes do, right? Like that is the majority of athletes, not every single athlete, but a lot of athletes are very perfectionistic. They, they're very driven. They want to do everything right. If, you tell them this is going to make them a better athlete, they will do it, right? And so when it comes to normal eating, some different principles to think about is that it a lot of times looks like 3 meals and some snacks. It looks like eating before you work out. It looks like eating afterwards. It looks like sometimes under eating and sometimes overeating. It looks like eating when you're with other people, even if you may not be necessarily hungry, or having a piece of cake to celebrate somebody's birthday. Again, even if you're not necessarily hungry for it, right? And so those are some of the things that come to my mind, are just some examples on an exhaustive list, but that can be considered what would be called normal eating. And now if I think about also for somebody, if they're like, okay, is my eating too perfect, or like, am I in a good spot with my eating? I think there's a lot of different factors to consider, right? So, thinking about some of the basics of nutrition. Are we incorporating, more of those nutrient-dense foods on a regular basis? Are we able to be flexible with our eating? I think a lot of times I also like to pose the question that, are you consistently getting anxious about going out to eat with other people, or anxious around food, right? So if we have some anxiety or fear around food, depending on, what it's going to do to us or how it's going to change our body, or we're missing social situations or times with others because of what's going to be available for eating, that's usually a red flag for me of, okay, there might be something deeper going on here, or we might be trying to be too perfect with our nutrition. Now, this doesn't include people that have like food allergies, right? So like more so of the fear of, maybe changing your body, or, weight gain or fat gain or something like that, or even just like negatively impacting your performance. So those might be some things that I would think about when it comes to like, if we are maybe being too perfect with our eating.
Yeah, let's even go further into that, because I think there's a lot of different guests who may listen to this or watch this and think of, okay, well, I want to learn from Maddi as a business owner. I want to learn from Maddi as a consultant, a former soccer player, and there's a particular group of people that may have tuned into this to listen about the certain trends that they're seeing, what we spoke about early on. One of the biggest ones is, and one of the myths, and you can debunk it for me, is
sure.
Eating after 8 p.m. automatically causes weight gain. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And I always like to, if I think about this in the context of athletes, I really try to discourage this line of thinking, because a lot of athletes are eating after 8.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe practice goes late. People are practicing after school, or like I remember back when I did track and soccer, I would go to track practice after high school, and then I would go to soccer practice directly afterwards sometimes. And so then we wouldn't be eating until, closer to 8 o'clock. And if that was the case, and we did automatically gain fat afterwards, and all of it turned to fat, then like, how are we going to get in our nutrition, right? And so like, I always really try to encourage my athletes that, our metabolism and our body's ability to digest and absorb and use the food as we need to doesn't just stop after an arbitrary time, right? And so we have to think about, we have to have that longer term or like wider framework versus just, zoning into like, okay, it's after 8 o'clock, I can't eat. We have to think about your total day picture, right? So like, if you weren't able to actually get in your recovery meal or a dinner meal, and it's after 8 o'clock, then like you need to eat that. Your body needs it. It's going to use that for recovery, right? And so I think where that can get more nuanced or sticky is like, let's say it's, just a regular student at college or even high school, right? And let's say, on a regular consistent basis, you're eating your meals and your snacks during the day, and then consistently you're eating, like mindlessly eating after 8 o'clock, right? Or, you're a college student, you go out with your friends, you order pizza shuttle, right? And you're doing that on a regular, consistent basis. So, and it's not necessarily that it's after 8 p.m. that's the problem. It's more of just like, okay, we're in an energy excess over the entire period of the day. And a lot of people, if you're eating after 8 o'clock, it might be more like, oh, I need a sweet treat, or I may not necessarily be hungry, but it's more of a habit that I'm going to eat here, right? And it may not be actually from biological hunger. And so that's where I say that can get a little bit sticky for people, but it's not necessarily like, okay, 8 o'clock hits, that goes automatically to fat storage. Our body is a lot more complex than that, and it needs a lot more done than just storing fat, right? So now most people are generally not as active at 8 o'clock, right? As they are compared to like maybe 10 a.m. or noon, right? Most of us are pretty active during the day, and then we're starting to wind down at that point. So there is definitely a decrease in your energy expenditure at that point, but you do really need to look at the totality of the day. And again, going back to athletes, a lot of people may not be getting to their dinner meal until 8 o'clock, or even somebody who, works a full-time job, and then maybe they go work out directly after their job. And then by the time they get home and make dinner, it's close to 8 o'clock, right? Like that person should eat, and they need to eat. It's not going to just go to fat storage. It's going to go to actually recovering and helping them meet their total energy needs during the day. So it's definitely a lot more nuanced than that. Our body doesn't just stop, metabolizing things correctly after 8 o'clock. We really have to think about that bigger picture.
Do you remember when we just spoke about the different trends, and we said one of them is body image, or particularly what we talked about with the importance of body image and how people are seeing themselves. Do you think this also ties into, because it deals with fat, and the idea is that if you eat over 8 p.m., it stores as fat and you gain more weight. Do you think this also comes into the trend of body image as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, especially when it comes to athletes in general, definitely some of those more aesthetic-based sports, so things like gymnastics or even endurance sports, rowing in some cases, volleyball, those are just kind of a couple examples, but those are, I feel like, some of those sports where that can get a little bit tougher, right? Like where there's that just more of that emphasis on body size and shape, right? And so that definitely is a place where, we do see increased eating disorder risk in those populations. But then I think, again, like I was saying, back to athletes in general, we want to prioritize muscle growth and gain, right? Like I think there is also definitely this real big emphasis on leanness at all cost. And I think it's really important that we understand and recognize that we do need a certain amount of fat in our bodies. Like fat, dietary fat provides us energy. And if we have enough and adequate fat stores on our body can pull from those for energy, which is great, especially for those longer, less intense sports, where we have that longer endurance duration. Your body is going to primarily pull from fat to be able to use as energy. And so body fat is not necessarily in and of itself a bad thing, right? And I think that our culture really is like, body fat in any capacity is bad, right? So now, of course, an excess for somebody that could cause some inflammation. There is correlations in the research between developing some of these medical conditions, but I wouldn't say that there's enough evidence to say that it causes that, right? So I think there's definitely a difference between correlation and causation. But in terms of athletes and their performance, there's also that aspect that if there's an excess of fat, that could negatively impact your performance, right? But we have to make sure that we're seeing it from the broader perspective of also understanding that our body size and shape is primarily decided based off of genetics. Right? So, I mean, of course, there's some lifestyle factors that play a role, but I know for me, I'm never going to be able to get to a place where I can go and be a defensive lineman. That's just not going to happen genetically, right? I could hit the gym, I could pound all the protein and the calories, but that's just not going to happen for Maddi Osburn, right? It's not going to be possible. And so I think we have to take that into consideration too. So,
definitely, because speaking on body image and fat, and before even pressing record, we talked about, or we did press record actually. I said the difference between someone who is at my weight and someone who's at a different weight. Another factor would be gender, and body fat is also, and body image especially. It has become, before, I don't know how much it is now, but with the trend of women, body image has become such a big topic with especially to do with fat and muscle. Two different things,
Right.
but they make up your body composition, and it is what is seen by the eye, another person's eyes.
Right.
With women in general, what does this look like where we're talking about fat as energy, but also with women naturally having more fat than men? Why has it become a case where women are sometimes looking to want to be as skinny as possible, just so that the image from men or even other women, it helps how they look at themselves? Is that healthy, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely is still, I think that there is more of a push for body positivity in both the athletic space and in the general space. I do think there's still a lot of work to be done in improving it, because I mean, there's trends like skinny talk, right? Like which is crazy, like stay far away from that, far away. But there is definitely still that really heavy emphasis on women being lean and as thin as possible. I know that was something that I had struggled with back when I developed my eating disorder. But I think that is definitely still a place that our culture could improve upon. And I would say in athletics, it definitely depends on maybe where you're at in terms of your sport. So speaking personally, I think at least in soccer, there was a wide variety of body shapes and sizes on a soccer team. They're not, totally varied like maybe a football team is, right? But there's still definitely more variance compared to like a track team or like a cross country team, right? Like it's a little bit more of, okay, these are the body shapes and sizes that are typically doing this at an elite level. And then in the soccer realm, it's a little bit more varied. So I don't feel like there was as much emphasis in like soccer for that. But I think definitely in some of those more aesthetic, lean based sports, that's more heavily emphasized. And again, I always like to say that I'm not saying that like, too much body fat in anyone is totally okay and just fine, right? Like there's definitely cases where somebody might be in that imbalance with their body composition that is impacting their performance, right? But I would say in general, we have to look at it more from a place of not just, okay, no matter what, I have to be as lean as thin as possible, because that also is bad, right? Like we don't want to be on either sides of the spectrum. We want to make sure that we're in a good genetic place for our body that has the right body composition. And then we want to make sure that we're not going outside of whatever that is. And so on either sides of the spectrum, that's not great. But I do think generally I am starting to see more of that body positivity push to encourage, women especially to allow themselves to take up space, right? Allow themselves to not have to continually try to change their bodies when it's just not working for them. But that also could just be that like, that's what I'm curating in my own like space because I just can't deal with anything else. But I feel like I am seeing more of that.
Yeah. And on the conversation of women, women versus men, from the beginning of time, this dispute in anything, male versus female, it's a conversation that could take us hours. But with regards to nutrition and diet, what have you been seeing in the trends of studies towards in terms of women's health compared to men's? There's always been a disparity. But have you seen this disparity kind of close?
I do think that there's definitely some strides that are being made. I feel like I can more so speak to sports specifically. I am definitely starting to see more of an increase in more women being present in these sports nutrition research studies, or just like sports in general, right? But I also think that there's just the fact that like we're trying to encourage more women and young girls to engage in sports and to stay in sports too, right? So I feel like that's relatively new compared to men being in sports, right? And so I think there's also just a little bit of a lag there in terms of just like women actually being more present, right? But I do think that we're starting to make strides there. And I think especially, I really love seeing more of the research that's coming out around women and their menstrual cycles and how we can best, just support women in terms of like their physical activity programming as well as their nutrition to help them when that occurs, because it can be incredibly detrimental for some athletes when they are on their period, or there's a lot of different things that they might feel or experience before, during, and afterwards. And so I think that it's really exciting seeing more research come out about it. I definitely don't think we're at a place where we can say, okay, definitively at this phase in your cycle you need to eat this, definitively at this part of your cycle you need to do this XYZ workout. I think that, you know, eventually over time we might be able to get closer to that or be able to have more definitive things, but it is really exciting to see more research that accommodates or considers that. And then, just kind of in general, we're incorporating more women in some of these other, you know, studies that maybe aren't necessarily specific to the menstrual cycle, but just in general, we're doing a better job of adding women. Like you said, there's still a disparity, but I think I'm encouraged by the improvement there.
Because I remember when I first started doing this, or early on, I was having a conversation with a basketball player, and I believe she tore her ACL either during her junior season. Okay. And we were just talking on the conversation of the particular conversation of ACL tears that are more prevalent in women's soccer. And we've seen the trends and the conversations about that in particular. And what I didn't know was that at the time, Nike particularly were making shoes to accommodate the body composition of women, so that they weren't using the same spikes and same stud patterns as men. Oh,
that's super cool. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. And maybe they're still doing it, I'm not sure. But it made me think, when we were talking to her in basketball especially, she educated me, and it kind of made me look like I didn't know anything, because I probably should have known this, that when women are on their periods, I think something happens where obviously their body goes through changes, and it makes their ligaments a lot looser. And when she said that, I was like, wow. I mean, I didn't jump to conclusions and go on my phone and research, has this been proven? I'm sure it has been. And have they followed this in terms of ACL injuries and meniscus injuries? When you speak on the differences that need to be taken, or the difference in diet for nutrition when women are on their periods, it's the same thing that I'm getting. I'm getting an idea that these things need to be considered more so. Like what you said, I need to know more. That's me. How could you, as not just someone in health, but someone as a woman, educate men to tell them, well, this needs to be considered? How could you do that more? What's one way that you could possibly help us?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, Jody. I mean, I feel like it's more so of, you know, just being aware, you know, that it does impact us in different ways, right? And I think it's even more so just being open to having the conversation and listening, or understanding that it can be so much more different, right? And I feel like there's a certain, you know, point where, like, I would never have expected you to know something as minute as, like, you know, and I didn't even know that it, you know, could have potentially made us more flexible, that could cause those things. Like, I didn't even know that. So there's no way that you would have, you know, there's no way you would have needed to know that. But I think, it's more of just, like, not only, you know, hearing and understanding that there's differences, but then, you know, making sure to take that into consideration, you know, or really more so, like, affirming, like, what a woman is experiencing. So I feel like there could be maybe times where it's like, oh, you know, just seeing it as like, oh, they're just PMSing, they'll get over it. Or, you know, I think just even listening and validating and affirming what someone is going through, especially like women when they are on their period, before, during, or afterwards, I think is maybe a good place to start. And I think that's, again, going back to, like, what I was saying with that, when a woman is on their menstrual cycle, or the different phases, that could impact nutrition programming as well as physical activity programming. I think at the end of the day, it's just more so listening to the woman and, like, what are the symptoms they experience, when do they experience it, and then adjusting nutrition and physical activity from there, right? And so I think that that's even a good starting place, or something to consider, I feel like.
Yeah. Something to change the conversation, more so if someone is looking to, or listening to this and wanting to understand, well, if I'm a woman or a man, I want to be able to change my diet. And I go on social media and someone's telling me to just eat meat. Someone's telling me to just eat plants. And there's this whole clash. Carnivore diet versus plant-based. Now, I feel like this is something that I've been trying to study. I practiced one at one time.
Okay.
And I practiced one the other.
Okay.
I don't think I practiced them as long as I should to get to make a true conclusion as to which one makes me feel better. But now that I have the privilege of speaking with you, maybe I can kind of understand which one I should maybe consider more or not. What do you think?
Yeah. So I always like to go back to, with my clients, when it comes to implementing a diet pattern, thinking about making changes to your diet or what you're wanting to implement, the first thing that I like to encourage us to think about is this sustainable for you? And when I say sustainable, I mean years. I don't just mean the next 3 months or the next 6 months. I mean, is this something that you can do realistically, sustainably, and consistently, not perfectly, but consistently for years? And if the answer is no, then why do it? There's no point in doing it, right? Because we want to do something that we can do realistically for years, right? And so I feel like that's where, like, especially the carnivore diet, that can get a little dicey because it is very, very restrictive, right? It cuts out a lot of foods. It can cause nutrient deficiencies. A lot of those foods are very, very high in saturated fat that can negatively impact our heart health, right? And especially thinking about an athlete, that cuts out carbs pretty substantially, right? Which is our body's most preferred and efficient source of fuel. And so I think when it comes to something like the carnivore diet, it's not something that is really something that someone should sustain for years on end, right? So that's kind of my take on the carnivore diet situation. And then when it comes to plant-based, I think that there's a lot of definitions there when it comes to plant-based, right? So there could be a vegetarian, there could be a vegan, somebody could be fine with dairy-based foods and eggs, but not fish or meat, or somebody can just do fish, but it's not doing anything else like eggs, dairy, or meat, right? So there's kind of a lot of different variations there. I like to think about it more so from even defining it as plant forward.
Plant forward.
Yeah. So when I say plant forward, I mean when you're eating, trying to eat and incorporate more plant-based foods on a regular, consistent basis. It doesn't exclude other foods. It just means that on a more regular basis, I'm trying to incorporate more plant-based foods. So when I say plant-based, I mean things like fruits and vegetables, beans, lentils, of course, grains, so rice, rice, tortillas, pasta, and then starches, so things like potatoes, corn, peas, things like that, while still incorporating things like fish, meats, dairy products, things like that. So, but we're trying to incorporate most of our diet coming from those plant-based foods. And where that can be very beneficial is a lot of those plant-based foods are really, really good for our gut. They incorporate carbohydrates. They're higher in fiber, which we know historically that Americans are low in, not protein.
Fiber.
Most Americans, yes, are getting enough protein. It's fiber in fruits and vegetables, those plant-based foods that we're not getting enough of. And so I tend to trend more to try and encourage people to eat more plant-based, or encouraging them to eat more plants, because it does provide not only the fiber and that gut health aspect, but also a lot of the micronutrients, right? Antioxidants, things like that help our body to perform well. Now, I think that this is a really nuanced topic because eating more of a plant-based or plant-forward diet can be very difficult for people. It tends to increase expenses. There's more prep work involved and things like that. Now, there are some nuances with it that we can kind of work around there. And I guess I would maybe argue that maybe the carnivore diet is still pretty expensive, but it's going to be hard to overeat a whole bunch of steak or chicken because it just gets so filling. So maybe, the volume might outweigh it in terms of the expenses, but yeah, so it's definitely more of a nuanced topic there, but I think I would trend more to try and encourage somebody to incorporate more of a plant-forward or plant-based diet.
Yeah. And if someone is looking to transition from the plant-based entirely rather than plant-forward, they're coming from a background where they've done let's say veganism, for example, where it's completely no animal products.
Right.
How would you try to tell them if they wanted to transition into something that is closer to including more meats, I guess for the first time for some? Would you say that's easier for them to transition towards plant forward and into eating meat, or is it harder for someone from carnivore diet to go to plant-based or plant forward?
I feel like it just really depends on the person. So like, I feel like I've had some clients that did do the carnivore diet, and it was really easy for them just to transition because they're like, I can't sustain this, and this is not fun. I'm constipated. I'm really tired all the time and fatigued. Now, I would say somebody who's following more closely to like the American Western diet, they might have a little bit more of a hard time because it may not be something that they're intentionally moving towards, or, they're not as, I think it really just comes down to motivations, right? So I think if somebody's adequately motivated, it could be good either way. But if you're coming from the carnivore diet to more of a plant-forward or plant-based diet, that is a really big transition, right? Yeah. So there could be some difficulty there. Now, in terms of transitioning from vegan to maybe incorporating more of the animal-based foods, I think I always like to say too that somebody can get adequate and great nutrition on a vegan diet. It's more so just making sure that you're really intentional with it and getting all of the nutrients that you need. Because with following a vegan diet, if you're not very intentional and you're not supplementing with things like B12, because we can only get vitamin B12 from animal-based foods, then you could also experience some nutritional deficiencies. And especially if we think about athletes, being a vegan can make it more difficult for you to eat enough total energy. And then that can negatively impact your performance. And so you just have to make sure you're very dedicated and very intentional with your eating if you're on a vegan diet. There's plenty of high-level athletes that follow a vegan diet, which is great. But again, you have to be intentional with it, and you have to be very on top of it, because you can fall into those nutritional deficiencies and you can fall into a low energy availability state, which would not be good for your performance. But in terms of maybe adding more of those animal-based foods, I feel like it might be a little bit easier just because you're already following this plant-based diet that is pretty restrictive. And so if you're able to open up your horizons more, if you will, and incorporate more of these other foods, it might make it easier for you to hit the calorie needs that you have during the day. It might make it easier for you to hit your protein needs. You may not have to supplement with additional things because you're just getting it from the food at that point. So, so hopefully that helps answer that, but that's kind of my jumbled thoughts there.
I got you. And I'm glad I remembered. I caught something about dairy, and I remember we early on we spoke about your coming full circle. About dairy and not using nut milks anymore, like almond milk. Why was that? Why did you go from not looking towards almond milk and going straight back to dairy?
Well, I realized so again, I made that choice from the dairy milk to the almond milk back when I was in college at Butler. I knew nothing about nutrition at that point. I think that was a big transition at that point. People were doing that in the name of health. One of my roommates was doing it. And so I was like, sure, like that must be what's healthy, right? It wasn't until I actually started studying nutrition that I realized, that is not necessarily healthy. It's just choosing a lower calorie option, essentially, right? And now a lot of those plant-based milks are fortified with calcium and vitamin D, where we can get that in like dairy-based milk already. But you're still missing out on some other nutrients in plant-based milk compared to what's naturally co-occurring in dairy milk, right? And also dairy milk, so I think about athletes too. We need a good amount of calories to remain in a good energy availability state, or balancing out our energy for what we're expending, right? And so switching to almond milk, not that doing that is bad by any means. There's plenty of athletes that do that. It's great and it works for them. There's a lot of reasons to do it. But I think we have to be careful with swapping higher energy foods for lower energy foods when we're an athlete, because that can put us in that low energy availability state, which is what ended up happening to me at one point. So we have to make sure we're like not saying that like low calorie equals healthy, because it's not necessarily the case, right? And so I just noticed over time that like I just did not prefer the taste of the almond milk situation. And I just preferred having dairy milk. It just tasted better to me. I tolerated it fine. It was a lot cheaper too, which was also a deciding factor as well. And I just noticed that, okay, it has other things like phosphorus and potassium, that's really going to help me with my bone health. And it has enough calories to help me to be more sustained longer and to help me to meet my energy needs during the day. So that's why I ended up kind of going full circle on it, because again, I think that the craze was that because it was lower calorie, it was healthier, right? And that's not necessarily the case, especially with athletes. So
that's interesting. And we've talked on many myths and many trends on nutrition in general. There's one more particular trend I want to speak about that I don't know honestly anything about, and I would like to know more, and I probably should know a lot more about it, but the term organic, could you somehow give me and speak to me as though I know nothing about or anything organic? Let's say I didn't even know how to spell the word organic. Can you tell me, and let's talk about that phrase itself. What does that say to you when I say the word organic? Yeah,
so the first thing that comes to my mind is sustainability. So organic certified farms or organic certified foods are coming from a farm or whoever it is, from more strict regulations about sustainability for the environment, for the products, for the animals. It's really more so about the agricultural and economic sustainability. That is what it is primarily focused on. And so I can't tell you necessarily the ins and outs of it because, again, sports and eating disorders primarily, but of course I know kind of the basics of it. So, but the vast majority of a place being considered organic or organic foods is coming from that place of sustainability. So, they're trying to help our planet to last longer, right? Which is great. So organic is good. I think that, if you're really passionate about sustainability, ethical aspects when it comes to farming and things like that, and plant products that helps us to promote more sustainability in our environment, that would be a great thing to invest in. When it comes to actual nutrition considerations between organic and conventional. So organic, again, there's a lot more regulation around it. So a farm, if they want to be organic, they have to meet that very specific sustainability criteria, which incorporates how they do their crops, how they go about their animals. So like, for example, they're not treated with growth hormones or antibiotics, right? Whereas conventional animals can be given things like growth hormones and the antibiotics, right? So there's that difference there too. So if that's something that you're very passionate about, it would be good to incorporate more organic products. Now, so that's the organic. And then conventional is farmers or places that don't have that organic symbol or don't have that certification. So after they've met the criteria, they actually have to pay for it too. So there's a lot that goes into it. That's also why it's more expensive, because there's more that goes into creating an organic product compared to a conventional product. Now, conventional also is still regulated. I want to make sure that's very clear. So like the FDA, the EPA, there's still plenty and lots of regulations around conventional products too. So it's not just that like, the animals are given willy-nilly all of this growth hormone or antibiotics. It's still very well regulated, right? It's just a different type of regulation. There's not as much sustainability regulations in conventional compared to organic. But when it comes to nutritional composition, there's minimal differences between organic and conventional. Wow. So somebody can eat a very highly nutrient-dense diet just from conventional foods or from organic foods. Wow. Yeah. So if you're really interested in the sustainability of your eating and putting your money towards products that are encouraging that sustainability of our economic system and agriculture, organic is a really good place to be. And then if, we're on a budget because I mean, organic foods are more expensive than conventional foods, right? And so if you're trying to meet certain budgetary criteria, and if you're just more so interested in the nutritional, what you're eating, and then maybe you're investing in sustainability in other places and doing things in your own home, then maybe conventional is the way to go, right? So hopefully that helps to kind of differentiate that a little bit. Again, I'm not going to go too far into the weeds because it's also been a while since I've known about all the weeds with the differences, but I can say with complete confidence that if we're really just trying to simplify it, that is how I might put those different buckets in the categories. So
you've mentioned the word sustainability and sustainable many times, and I like that because when I think of sustainability, and I think of something that we attempt to be eternal or last longer and it healthier, those type of words just come to mind. And at the end, I think of life, L-I-F-E, I think of life. As we begin to wrap this all up, Maddi, your mother, and your mother of two. Now, there's something about speaking with someone who is going to change the way I see my body and my life in terms of health. But there's something about speaking with someone who has given life that is a lot more, I would say, enticing, to listen to someone who is not just promotes health and serves others, but also has created life.
Wow, Jody, you're really talking me up now. I feel really great right now. This is awesome. Keep going. Keep going.
I've been practicing. I'm just joking. But you've created life, your mother. How has motherhood changed your, not view on nutrition, but your journey with nutrition, if it has? Yeah.
Oh, it for sure has. I mean, the whole impetus for me really fully recovering from my eating disorder was wanting to get pregnant and having kids. And so through both my pregnancies and having both of my children, they have really helped me to just remain really firm in my recovery and my relationship with food, because I want that for them. And I want them to have a really healthy relationship with food and their bodies and to live their fullest life. And I also want to give that to them and be the most present mother as I can, and I can't do that and hold on to disordered eating and exercise behaviors, right? And it was really interesting over the course of both pregnancies and then also after having them, there's been these little things that I've noticed that maybe I held on to with some of my disordered habits or behaviors that I had to really face more and let go. So for example, I was able to exercise pretty regularly and at a similar intensity with my first baby, Bryn, who's my daughter. Whereas with Brock, my second, I had to pretty much stop most all intensive exercise and running really early on in that pregnancy, just because it didn't feel good.
You felt tired.
Yeah, my pelvis felt really off. It just was hurting more so. I was more tired. I had way worse nausea in my first trimester than I ever did with my first. And so there just was a lot of things that were adding up that was I just should not be continuing to do this. I can't exercise that same level. And so part of my eating disorder incorporated compulsive exercise. And so I noticed that there were some things that I still had difficulty with. And so with being pregnant with Brock, it really challenged me to just be okay with walking and stretching for a long period of time. I did not run. Basically, I want to say from 12 or 14 weeks of that pregnancy until after I was at least 6 weeks postpartum. So it was a long time. It was close to a year that I didn't run. And so that was a really good challenge for me of just really, again, reforming my relationship with exercise and thinking about it differently. And so, and then, even just seeing my kids eat with joy and without abandon, it just really has also encouraged me to just really continue to have joy in eating and sharing food with others. So I feel that's a lot of how that has changed me and how that's encouraged me in my own relationship with food.
I bet with not being able to run, that's something that you love to do now. Not being able to do something that you love.
Yeah.
Sounds like a sacrifice for something that you love more.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I would like to ask you if that was easy, but I'm sure it wasn't. But I'm sure the decision of putting your children first and what you thought was the best thing to do, and it was because you were feeling better and you knew that you couldn't sustain it at that time.
Right.
Was it a bit difficult to give up something that you wanted to do, and what made you feel and what made you healthy running to be able to, take care and sacrifice for your baby boy.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. But I feel like motherhood just in general has been this really spiritually refining process of continuing to lay down my life and my desires, right? Like we know that Jesus did that for us. And so I think it's been a really great opportunity for me to actually try to practice that on a day-to-day basis of having to like lay my life down in my own desires, because that's just what you have to do when you have kids. They become your main priority, and all your other priorities change. And so I think that it has been something that I've had to like lay down more so and be okay with. All right, like, I got up early to go exercise and Brock woke up or Bryn woke up. Or, and a lot of it too is even trying to work around like, okay, maybe I'll still try to exercise, but it's going to look a little bit different. She's going to want to play with me or do the workout with me. But at the end of the day, like, that's why I do it, right? Like I move my body and exercise so that I can play with them, so that I can enjoy life with them. I'm hoping, at some point when they're older, we can all go biking together or, so I want to be able to be that active mom that's with them and also encourages them to see movement from a place of joy, not from like, oh, I have to hit these certain metrics or have to hit this certain amount of calories or it has to be this long and look this way to be movement. I want them to see it from a joyful place. And if they see mom doing it from a joyful place, then they're more likely to engage in exercise too. And so I think it has been this really great, refining process of just laying down those things, because again, at the end of the day for me, while running is something I really enjoy, I love it. I hope that I can do it for as long as God lets me. It's not my ultimate purpose. It's not my, it's not what, when I look back on my life and I'm on my deathbed, am I going to think about, how many half marathons I ran or how many, if I BQ'd or not, right? Like, I mean, I would love to do that, but that's not what I'm going to be thinking about then. And so while I can still, try and make it a priority and incorporate it, if I'm making it the top priority, then there's a problem. So.
Yeah. Wow. This is interesting. And as I come to my last few questions, it's more of I try to make this a conversation, like I said, and not an interview, because I enjoy doing this. I don't enjoy doing this stuff, like setting up everything and editing and that stuff, but I do it because I enjoy not only speaking with guests that are in an area that I want to learn more about and get into, but also be able to show others that, what they're thinking can also be something else, or what they're thinking is right, or what they're thinking could be changed. And I think for that reason, one of the last words you mentioned was purpose. And you said your why changed when you became a mother. And by what it sounds like, it changed for the reason of your children. I think back to when I was still playing, and I think of the times I want to do more sprints, even though I didn't want to, just so that I can last the 90.
Right.
You want to be able to do certain things and be as fit as possible, not to do marathons, not to break records, not to continue playing soccer afterwards, but to be a healthy and strong mother for your children.
Right.
That's incredible.
Thank you. Keep talking, Jody. I love it.
That's incredible. And I want to ask you, what do you, about your deathbed, what would you be thinking about instead of the marathons? What's that thought that you think you would have?
Yeah, I feel like I would think about, how did I love and care for my family? Did I, engage in the Great Commission, which is sharing about Jesus and his love for us? Was I faithful in my day-to-day? Did I make a difference in at least somebody's life? I feel like those are probably the top things that come to my mind. Yeah.
My final question, and you probably will not expect me to ask this, but what's your grocery list?
Oh, it's my grocery list? Oh my gosh, this is fun. How much time do you have? No, I'm just kidding. I feel like some of our usual family staples are bananas, peanut butter. So Maddie cannot does not like to go a day without banana and peanut butter. Like that's a must as much as possible. My daughter is obsessed with berries. So strawberries. I really like to get the frozen like blueberries or like the just berry mixes because she also really likes those. She also really likes grape tomatoes and just tomatoes in general.
Really?
So there was one time when I was grocery shopping with her when she was little, and I was trying to distract her, have her do something, and so I just gave her like a full-on like tomato, like a big Roma tomato. Yeah, I just thought she would hold it, play with it, whatever. No, she ate that entire tomato like an apple. I was like,
in the grocery store?
Yes, in the grocery store. I had to tell the cashier, I'm like, you got to add an extra tomato because my daughter just ate all of it. So that's a pretty regular. We are obsessed with enriched white rice. So we'll do that with a lot of different, like, we'll get like orange chicken and have it with that, or other chicken dishes, or I'll pair salmon with it. I always joke with my clients that, like, yes, brown rice is a whole grain, but I will never, ever eat that again if I don't have to. It's disgusting. Give me white rice all day, every day. The sticky white rice, that is the way to go. Let's see. What else do we do? I love the Fage Greek yogurt. So I love to do, Greek yogurt bowls. I'll make my own granola with that. And then chicken. We eat a lot of chicken. I like to do spinach salads a lot at lunches. So I'll get spinach. I usually like to have carrots on hand, bell peppers, just because those are a little bit easier. And then other fun stuff. Let's see. I really like those ice cream cookie sandwiches. Oh, yeah. We're seeing those, of course. Especially the ones from Trader Joe's, if I can get those. Also, my new hyper-focus food is the fig cookies from Trader Joe's.
Is it the fig bar, or is it?
It's not the fig. They're fig cookies specifically from Trader Joe's. Okay. So I do like fig Newtons, but the fig cookies from Trader Joe's, if no one's ever tried those, they are amazing. Okay, so they are better than any other fig Newton you'll ever have. Specifically those. Also, I really like to use Pop-Tarts for like pre-workout fuel. So I'll do that a lot of times. It's on my grocery list. I'll think of maybe like a couple others if they come to mind.
Yeah, like dinner.
Whole milk, of course, because I've got little kids, but also just because it's easier. A lot of dinners that we do, like I mentioned, like the orange chicken and white rice. We just recently did this like crock pot. I love crock pot meals, so we'll do that quite a bit, like chicken tetrazzini. Or my husband, he really likes to grill, so he'll do like grilled chicken. We'll do sweet potatoes, asparagus, things like that. So there we go.
I'm sure a lot of their clients, hopefully they listen and think, you know, I feel more comfortable now. I don't have to eat plain just chicken, broccoli. I remember eating this chicken, broccoli, and white rice every single day, twice a day. I don't have to eat that. I can be a bit flexible in my nutrition.
Yes.
And for me, I feel comfortable listening to that as well. Understanding now that coming from being disciplined in eating, but still understanding that there is room for something else. There's room for change, some alteration of to make it balanced. Right. And that's one of the first words we knew that would come up a lot in our conversation today. Yep. And I'm full with information to share, and I'm glad I was able to get this conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Jody.
Thank you.